Hi everyone, I am elect Robby Adamson, and I'm going to do a quick stream today on solving puzzles. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to use chess.com, and we're going to use their puzzles, and we're going to solve them. But what I'm going to do when we solve them is we're going to do it together. So I don't know the answers in advance, but I'm going to give you my thinking process as to what to look for when you are doing puzzles. And we'll see how we do with this. Okay, so we're going to start on chess.com here with their puzzles, not to be confused with Puzzle Rush or Puzzle Battle, which are two different ones where you actually are race against time. This one we're going to actually do some training. So let's take it out. Let's take a look and see how this goes. So we're going to start with this. Hopefully my rating doesn't go down too much. All right. So here, first thing we have to do whenever you're analyzing a puzzle is you look for, you have to evaluate the position, you have to assess it, and so who's ahead material? White is down a clean piece, all right? Rook takes d5, doesn't do anything immediate here. White has to kind of go pretty quick here, so I'm going to guess queen d8 is probably the move. Do you see any other moves here that might be played? That has to be it. Rook g1 would just allow knight f6, and then we got to take this rook, I'm assuming, and probably the hard part of this puzzle is figuring out the next point, because now he's threatening to play bishop takes and actually trap the queen. So we actually have to come up, and of course you should have done this analysis before you even got to this, but here I think we're going to go ahead and create a threat with rook to g1, and I think that creates enough pressure. g6. Okay, so we can certainly take and not allow at least our queen to get trapped, but we got to go for a little bit more than that. So do we have anything else here? No queen move is going to be good, although it's probably okay too. But something tells me that HG, and then queen h6 should do the trick. Although that's actually, yeah, that looks pretty convincing. Let's try it. Take. Correct, in the end of the puzzle. So we got this one right. So I think the hard part of seeing this is to find the move rook g1 at the end, although I don't think that's actually really that difficult. So we did get that one correct. The target time's 28 seconds, and we did it at minute 42, so that was probably a little bit too long. Probably could have gone a little faster, but you know, these are pretty high-level puzzles at the 2900 level, so we got to make sure we're not missing something easy. So let's try the next one. All right, so here we have a position in which it's 5 pawns to 4 pawns. So white is up a pawn. Second thing we notice is that there are opposite colored bishops in the position. Third thing we notice is that rook h6 check is almost mate. I'd have to sack my queen to get out of it. So, for example, rook takes e5 here, winning a piece, does nothing of the sort. It just allows rook h6 check. So we're going to have to find something more compelling than that. So this is definitely a tougher one. You always have to analyze the checks, but there's only one check here, so I don't see anything there. As we said, taking on e5 just allows rook h6. So what could be the move here? Can't play rook f1 because of the exact same thing. So to me, this leads us to believe that we have to stop rook h6 check. And we got to figure out the best way to do this. If I play queen h5, he has king g7. That's annoying, because he threatens rook h6 again. Unless I have a way out of that. And then, of course, you have to compare it with queen h7 as well. So what's the difference between queen h7 and queen h5? One stops king g7 and one doesn't. So that's where I'm kind of leaning right now. But again, you have to calculate. You just can't assume that this is going to work. If queen h7, queen f2, I have rook f1, so that looks good. So we're going to go ahead and give this I think queen h7 is the right way to play this position because it stops this. And note that the king can't escape because rook takes e5. And queen h5 allows king to g7, amongst maybe other things. So we're going to try, yeah, we can do this. Aha, we got it right. So now we just have to find the next move, which is, I didn't mention this, but it was one of the ideas behind this, is to go ahead and take this guy, and then give a check, and then take here, and we again won a piece. And here he's in check. If we kept going here and he played rook e6, if he played rook e6, again we'd have to be careful not to. We have to still stop rook h6, so we'd probably have to play something like queen g5 check. That maintains the pin here, so there's no problem there. If the king went to d7 here, then we actually could take with the rook. We could take d5 with the rook because then this would be pinned and there would be no problem. So anyway, that was a little tougher. I think the hard part was deciding, and I think the trick of the puzzle is to find out which move do we want to play. If we play queen h5, he has king g7. So always compare. When you have two moves that threaten similar things, you got to figure out which one. What's the difference between the two? So here you actually do see the difference between the two. All right, and so hopefully we got that right. Let's go on to the next one. All right, queen takes. So let's evaluate the position, assess it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 pawns for black and 3 pawns for white. So guess what? White has to find something very defining here. I'll tell you what my instincts tell me. My instincts tell me that taking on g7 with the bishop is a winner. So if bishop takes g7, if he takes, it's just mate. Rook takes g7 and queen h6 leads to mate. If bishop takes g7, queen takes queen, king takes queen, bishop takes bishop, rook takes bishop, king h8, and then we just retreat the rook on g7 to literally any square. And then you have a rook over to the h-file, which is mates. So you might ask yourself, well, why don't we take the queen first and then take on g7? Okay. Well, the problem with that is if you do take on d3, cd, bishop g7, he has, unfortunately, rfc8 check. The king moves, and then he can take the bishop, and his king can run to f8, and there's no problem. So I'm safe in thinking that this is just winning. All right, and then we got to take this guy, and that was just winning again. So not too difficult to find. Again, the first thing you should look at in positions like this is when he takes this, is you should look at rook takes g7 first. Okay. Sorry about that. You should look at rook takes g7 first, but then takes, rook takes, king h8. There is no follow-up there. There just isn't. You know, you don't have time for queen g2. You're just not going to have time for that. Black could play rook g8 to start, which would be just an easy way to get out of that. So, okay, so that wasn't too tough. I think this is my all-time high rating. I don't think I've been this high before, but we'll see. All right, let's go to the next one. Rook b1. All right, so again, we're going to assess. And so what's the assessment tell us? The assessment tells us that white is up a pawn. What else does the assessment tell us? That white is as passive as you can possibly be. His bishops are on very meek squares, and the rook on b1 is dreadful. So that's not so good. So that's what I'm looking at first. What are the candidate moves here? So actually, one more thing I want you to see is when you're looking at this position, take a look and note, because I already see the answer, note that the obvious answer is bishop g5, but I have bishop g4 check, which is annoying, and then rook e2. So, do we see anything else here? I see that we control the 2 light squares here with the knight being here. So I think the answer is simply to take. All right, you give him a little tickle with bishop g5, and now the king has to go back, and then you have rook to d8. So I think that's going to be a winner. Let's check it out. Rook d8. And now the question is, do we take with the rook or the knight? Taking with the rook is check, so you would normally think that would be the right move. But if you go a little deeper in the position, you see that if you take with the knight, you are now hitting the rook, and wherever the rook moves, you have a discovery, so you can pick up another pawn. At the very least, you're going to pick up a pawn that will make it up a pawn of material. White's rook can't go to any square on the second rank. I'm sorry, on the e file. Rook f1 or rook g1 are the only moves I see, and on either of those we could take. I would probably I would advocate for taking on b2, because then we each have, it's a 3-2 versus 3-2, and then the c pawn is very, very weak. So I think that's the winner there. All right, so let's check out another position. Knight takes f7. Okay, a provocative move, something that requires your immediate attention. So what's the count here? Again, we're going to assess. It's 4 pawns for 4 pawns, knights, rooks, and queens. So we have a dead equal position in terms of material. But clearly, this is a position where white has to, white's playing something that's aggressive here. Taking on d5 does not look right for black, because then queen takes, and then I can't take the knight because of rook e8 check. And if I don't take the knight, he's got knight h6 check, smothered mate ideas, knight h6, king h8, queen g8, rook takes, and knight f7. So I can already eliminate rook takes d5. I can safely say that. Knight takes b4 looks juicy in that it forks a rook and a queen, but the problem is that he still has queen e6, which threatens that same smothered mate. So when I saw this position, I noticed that the queen on c6 and the rook on d5 are on the same diagonal. I also noted that this f file is open, so it leads me to believe that queen f3 is actually the correct move here. The reason being is that it pins the rook, first of all. So if he takes here, I can just simply take back here. And if he takes and takes, there's just nothing there. There's no back ranks or anything like that. Queen f3 threatens to win a rook, this rook on d5. But also the hidden thing, not hidden, but the idea is if he takes on d8 with the knight, then we take on f2, the king goes to h1, we take on e1, the king goes to g2, and we have queen f1 mate. So this looks like a winner to me. Let's try it. Okay, we were right, queen e6. And now we have to choose the right one. Again, taking the rook on d5 would allow knight h6, queen takes d5, knight takes d8, queen takes, knight takes. There's not, that still looks pretty good for black, but there's got to be better. And I'm pretty sure that we found the right move with queen f7. Because if queen takes, we don't have to take with the rook. We can take with the king. If he takes on d8 first, we can take back with the rook. We don't trade queens first because he can take on f8. King takes f8, and then rook e6. So I feel pretty confident with queen f7. And then this is just what we were just talking about. And so taking on e6 would be a disaster because he could take the rook with check. So we're just going to take this, and we are just winning. Okay, so not too bad. Again, one of the things you have to notice in the position is always notice that whenever you're looking at a position fresh, always note that note the things that the pieces have in common. The rook and the queen being on the same diagonal is significant. My instincts when I first saw this position, I swear, it was queen f3. Only because I saw the pin and I saw that knight takes rook would not have been possible because of queen f2. When I saw this position, I saw if knight takes d8 as a threat, I have to do something. And I quickly eliminated rook takes d5 because of queen takes d5. So I was like, well, what else am I going to do? I can't take with a king because then I get mated in 1 with queen e6. Can't take on f7 with the rook because he plays rook takes d8. So I think that was not too hard to solve, but I mean, again, you have to have the vision, the position. Of course, you'll never solve it if you don't see queen takes, if you don't see the common tactical pattern of taking on f2, taking on e1, and then going queen to f1. So you just got to be familiar with that to see it. All right, let's try another one. We haven't missed one yet. Knock on wood. Okay, so g6. Aha! Interesting position. So this is definitely a pawn race. We have to figure out which is the best way to do this. The first thing I notice in the position is that white's down a pawn, but that's really not that material in this position because white can actually threaten to get a pass pawn right now with a5. So if a5 takes c5, okay, the c5, if he takes here, he's got c6, and then there's king e6. So we have to calculate king c5 there and see if that wins. Clearly c5 is awful because takes, check, takes, and then gh, we're going to win. So the only question here is it worth it to take the pawn here and draw the king away? Because let's count this out. If takes, takes, let's calculate what black's threats are. In that position there, it takes black 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to queen. Okay? If I play a5, that threatens to play queen in 3 moves, and if he takes, I can queen in 4 moves. So the question is, if I take here and take and play a5, ba, c5, can the king catch the pawn? So we have to calculate king f6, king d5, king e7. I think that's a problem. So I'm going to guess that a5 is the right move, but we do have to do a little bit more calculation to make sure we're correct. So if a5, gh is going to lose instantly to ab, so I don't have any problem dismissing that. So then ba, c5, gh, c6 allows king e6, but then I have king c5, and I'm going to queen with check. So that's going to win. Watch. Let's check it out. Let's play c5, c6, although I wonder if king... Now notice that if king d5... Well, I wonder if king d5 is even better, though. But anyway, if c6, king e6, king c5, h4, king b6, h3, and we're going to queen. So that's going to win. So I wonder what's wrong with king b5, or king d5. King d5, h4, that probably wins. Why does that not win too? It only takes 1 to win. So c6, king here, king c5, king e7, king b6, that's winning. Yeah, so we were able to calculate that one to a win. Now, let's actually check, because I'm actually curious. In this position, let's not cheat. So if takes, oh, we got to analyze, don't we? All right, so we're going to go back to the position, and we haven't shown exactly. So let's check this out. So ba, if c5, I'm sorry, if we play c5. GH. Does king d5 win? Let's check this out. So we're going to queen in 3 moves with check, and black's going to queen in 4 moves. But we are queening with check. So I'm wondering what the problem is here. So if a4, king c, no, a3, we're queening with check. Is king e7 a move? If c6, king e7, so here I have to play king d6. Does that change anything? Now it does change something, because now h4, now we're not queening with check. Do you see the difference now? So that required some analysis there to figure that out. And now this is, I mean, at best is going to be a draw. I mean, it probably is a draw, but anyway, it's important that you see those differences, okay? and not just rely on the fact that king d5 shields the king off and you queen with check. It's important that you know this. It's important you know this trick. So here, c5, gh, c6, and it just sort of stopped here after this. But in actuality, you do need to know a little bit more. h4, don't make the double question mark. This would be awful. c7, because of this here, and we get in front of the pawn, and then black's just going to win. So white just completely screwed up. So you just got to take the time and say king to b6, h3, and again, don't play the wrong move here. If you play king b7, you're going to lose, because then h2 c7, I'm going to queen with check, and then it's going to be lost. So you actually have to play c7 here. That threatens queen. If the king goes to d7 and the king goes to b5, and now we're threatening to simply queen with check, and it's all game over. So anyway, I just wanted to solve some puzzles with you guys and give you guys a sense of how I think and assess positions, and hopefully that was helpful to everyone. I know this is not the longest video in the world, but I wanted to give this a try, and hopefully this is helpful to those who you watched today. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.